Hello, guys, and welcome back to another episode of Late Night Talk. And in today's podcast, we'll have another absolutely amazing guest that majority of you know very well: YouTuber, content creator, fish keeper, and breeder. But first of all, absolutely amazing person, Taylor from Simply Betta. Taylor, thank you so much for being here today, and welcome.
Hi, Pat. Thank you so much for having me and for the kind words.
So before we begin discussing various topics that I have prepared for you today, in case that there is somebody listening who does not know you, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a bit more about who is Taylor or Simply Betta?
Absolutely. Well, my name's Taylor or Simply Betta, and I have a YouTube channel where I'm basically obsessed with betta fish and keeping them and breeding them and doing fun aquascapes and planted tanks and DIY projects centered around betta fish. They're my favorite thing ever, pretty much. So I love to talk about them.
So before we're going to begin, let's move to complete beginning. Can you tell us how did you get started with fish keeping, or how your entire fish keeping journey began, and what maybe motivated you to get your first aquarium, and do you remember which one that was?
I've been interested in fish for a long time. Like ever since I was a kid, I had this unusual fascination with fish and ponds and fish tanks, and I could never really pursue it. I was just a kid, and then I used to work at a pet store as a cashier, but I couldn't interact with any of the animals because I was just the cashier and I was staring at the walls of fish tanks, not being able to do anything about it because my house was just too small to have a fish tank. It was super small. I grew up in this little cabin in the middle of the woods in Alaska. And so we didn't have a fish tank. Of course we didn't have a fish tank. And so as I left Alaska and I was off working and moving states constantly and pursuing my career, again, I could never really pursue my interest in fish. Instead, I just had to read about them, and then I'd be on Facebook groups learning about betta fish genetics, and I was so interested, reading research papers, and I just had this unusual fascination that I could never pursue. Finally, I was able to settle down a little bit just a few years ago and actually pursue my interests.
So you've basically started with the research and then get your first aquarium?
Yeah, that was it. I was super into just reading and learning about planted tanks and fish, but I could never do it until finally my life was a little more stable and I wasn't living in apartments moving constantly. And I felt comfortable actually just buckling down and pursuing it really in depth.
Yeah, that's super funny because majority of people actually like accidentally get a fish or maybe get a goldfish at the fair or something like that and then get into hobby that way. But you're, I think, like second person ever that actually I've heard that made like complete proper research before getting your first aquarium. So that's super funny.
Yeah, I remember the day that I felt like I was finally ready to pursue this interest of mine. I was at a Mexican restaurant with my husband and my baby at the time, who was, just sitting in the car seat, just being a baby. And I remember talking to him and being like, honey, so I want to talk to you about something. I think I would like to start a YouTube channel and and make videos about this thing I'm interested in breeding betta fish. And he was floored because he had no idea that I was even interested in fish because I never really told him. And he was just like, "Oh, sure." He was like, I don't care." And little did he know that it would basically engulf our entire house. So that's my funny story about how my husband agreed and then probably regretted it. It's all good. No, he likes it. He does like my little hobby.
That's absolutely amazing. That was actually another topic that I wanted to talk about because I'm following your channel for a very, very long time. I think I started following you since you've had like 20,000 subscribers or something like that. So I'm not there since the entire beginning, but that's what I wanted to talk about, like how this entire idea came up that okay, let's make a YouTube channel, let's make videos about fish. How did it all started?
That was just another interest of mine, YouTube channels and film in general. I come from the video game and film industry. I used to be an art director with with an animated series, and I used to work in the game industry. So it's just something that I was interested in. And doing a YouTube channel was like this, it was just another aspect that I wanted to explore. And one person who I would watch a lot, her channel's called Inglorious Bettas, and her name's Jeanne. And I just enjoyed watching her content so much. I thought, man, I could do that. I could make this fun YouTube channel too and be just like Jeanne.
Definitely. And by this time we can 100% say that you've been able to accomplish that and you're very close to that magical 100K milestone. So congratulations with that.
Oh, thank you. I am really close and I can't even believe it.
Yeah. I mean, that is one of the dreams of every single small content creator, I guess, to get to that 100K. And I'm super, super happy for you because, as I said, I'm following your channel for quite a while and been through that entire journey with you, or almost, because, yeah, I've missed those first 20,000K. But what I wanted to ask you about is, what do you think was the main turning point or video that kickstarted growth of your channel? Or was it more like consistent growth?
Yes. When I first started my channel, my first couple videos that I made actually did really well, like unusually well. And I wouldn't say they went viral, but I would say that they went out into the YouTube algorithm and I ended up getting a lot of traffic from it. So I feel like at the beginning I had a boost that most people don't have. And besides that, it's just been consistent posting. Even though I only maybe post like once a week, I did my best to be consistent about it. And I think it's just consistent and trying to make good, interesting videos. And also good videography, as at least as best as I could. This is something that I've been learning as I go. It's like, okay, how do I tell this interesting story or how do I make this interesting? Also trying to figure out how to keep people entertained. It's been a learning process, absolutely. Like looking back on my old videos, I tend to go like, ugh, I did such a bad job, but I didn't really. And I am really excited to be close to that 100K mark. It's becoming harder and harder to keep up with all my comments. Usually I reply to everybody, but it's becoming so hard lately.
I can totally imagine that with 100,000 subscribers, it has to be so difficult to reply to everything. I'm sometimes having trouble replying to all my comments, and I have only a bunch of them. So I can totally, totally understand that.
Every time I post a video, I usually dedicate a few hours that day to replying to people just because I like it. I like interacting with people and replying to people. So I do my best. I feel bad for all the people maybe who I miss. It was an accident.
I'm definitely sure that everybody can understand that with so many people commenting on your videos. And I have to admit that the videography of your videos is absolutely amazing, and the videos are super entertaining to watch.
Oh, thank you. I try really hard.
So now let's jump into a bit more educational topics that you're expert in basically. You're breeding bettas for a very long time. So how do you do it and what is your formula for successful breeding?
All right. Well, this is something that I've actually never really made a video about, even though my channel's about bettas. I don't know why. I feel like I get anxious. Like, oh my gosh, I have to make a how to video and I'm going to have so many people asking me questions. And it's something I've been avoiding. And I know that's not good. I just need to do it. I just need to do it. My betta breeding process is pretty straightforward. I learned this back in the day from Yoop of Betta Territory, who has a YouTube channel and a website, bettaterritory.nl. And that's pretty much how I started. So the first step that I take is to just make sure that my pair is healthy. I want my male and my female to be really well fed. I spend a couple weeks just feeding them a couple times a day, really fattening up that female. I want to see that she has eggs that are noticeable, like a noticeable nice round belly. And that's something that's not unusual for fish breeding at all. But the male, I also want to be very well fed. And then the next step is to actually put them into the tank. I will have a tank just with a few inches of water in it at a nice warm temperature. I'll have a heater. I'll usually have a sponge filter in there. I'll have a piece of styrofoam or bubble wrap or an Indian almond leaf kind of taped into a corner. I put the female into the tank in a jar or a little container because I want to see signs that the male is actually interested in building a bubble nest, that she is actually looking at the male and, they're doing their little flirty dance. And I want to see the good signs. I don't want to see a timid, scared female. I don't want to see a male who's just too aggressive and nasty. That shows me that maybe they're not quite ready yet. Once I see those good signs, I'll release the female. I'll watch them for a little while. And then usually I'll just leave them alone. I'll make sure that the female has a place to hide if she wants to, retreat or feel comfortable. But usually using this method, I will, at least within a few days, I'll get a big nest of eggs. And I do leave them in, at least for like maybe 2 or 3 days. I'll give them some time. After I'm sure that they've spawned and that they're finished, I'll remove the female and I'll just leave the male in there with the eggs. And he'll usually tend to the nest. He'll make sure the eggs, aren't falling out of the nest too much. And After about 3 days, the fry are free swimming, and I'll take the male out and I'll have a big batch of fry.
Well, it is one of the most entertaining process that I've ever seen. I have to admit that I haven't tried it yet, but it is definitely on my to-do list in the future because I really, really love watching videos of betta breeding. But because I don't have enough tanks yet, it is a project that's gonna first be coming in the future. But it's so elegant and beautiful process to watch them actually do their own thing, and as you've said, all the dance and everything. I'm really, really loving this process, and I hope that I'm gonna be able to try it in the future.
Oh, I hope so too. It is really fun. I love fish that have like a paternal instinct and fish that take care of their young. I think it's really neat and a little more entertaining than something like a just an egg scatterer or a guppy. Not trying to offend minnow and guppy lovers out there.
Yeah, no worries. No offense taken at all.
Okay. Okay.
Another topic that I would like to talk about is diet. And what are you usually feeding your adult fish and fry? And from your videos, I know that you really enjoy live food cultures. So, do you have any of those right now going?
I do love feeding live cultures. For fry, it's pretty much a necessity. Betta fry are so little, they're like little eyelashes. They need microscopic food. They won't take pellets, they won't take flake food. I feed them live foods. And what I use is something called vinegar eels. Vinegar eels are really easy to keep in little tubs of like apple cider vinegar. They're just these little tiny worms. Well, they're not actually worms, they're nematodes. You can filter these out of the apple cider vinegar using like a coffee filter and basically have this to microscopic food you can feed your brand new fry. Like before they're even big enough to take baby brine shrimp. A lot of people use infusoria. Infusoria. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I don't think I've ever said that out loud before.
I'm not sure. I think it's infusoria, but I'm not native English speaker, so I have no idea.
Well, you could fool me. Oh my goodness. So a lot of people use infusoria, and which is basically you're feeding little tiny microscopic organisms to these tiny little fry. Once a few days pass, I feel like they're big enough to take baby brine shrimp, so I'll start feeding baby brine shrimp and also something called microworms. Microworms are another live food that I really like. You can culture them really easily just using like oatmeal. That's how I do it. The only downside to microworms is that they sink down to the bottom, so you want to feed very sparingly because you don't want the microworms to just sink down to the bottom and create waste and spikes in ammonia. After microworms and baby brine shrimp, when the fry get a little bit bigger, then I'll start doing things like grindle worms, which are just little tiny white worms that you can cultivate in like soil. And I really like those. Fish go crazy over these little tiny grindle worms. I love those. And then after that stage, that's when I start introducing things like rapashi sometimes, pellets or flakes, crumble. That's when I start doing more. And then for my adults, I really like to feed just a high quality, high protein pellet. I also do bloodworms and another live food called white worms, which I also cultivate. They need pretty cool temperatures. You can think of them like a cousin to grindle worms, but they're bigger. They're better for bigger fish. But they do require cooler temperatures, so they're a little bit more of a pain to keep.
And in case that some of you guys would be wondering how to culture all these microworms and all these organisms, all of the videos are on Simply Bettas channel. I think you have pretty much guide on every single one of these cultures.
Gosh, I think
And if
so.
not, at least you've been talking on every single one of them on your channel. Because I think the ones that we've mentioned right now, like all of them, when I was doing my research about them, I mostly came across your videos, I think.
Oh, right on. Yeah, I do talk about them a lot, and then I do sell them on my website. I sell a lot of live food cultures off my website.
I have seen that, and we're going to be talking about your website as well very soon.
Oh, sweet.
Currently, if you would reflect back in time, what do you think was your most unique betta species that you've ever owned? And do you maybe also have one particular fish that for some reason you're most proud of?
I think my most unique betta is probably a wild species called Betta macrostoma. I love this species. They're the largest wild species of betta because betta, a lot of people don't realize that it's an entire family of fish. But when we talk about them, usually we're talking about the little domesticated, the little colorful, cute kinds. But bettas are a big family, and I really love the Betta macrostoma just because they're so big. They're mouth brooders, so the male, he takes care of his eggs and he just holds them in his mouth for like a month before finally releasing his fry. So that would probably be the fish I'm most proud of, mostly because they're very difficult to breed, and I've had some good success with macrostoma, except for recently. I've been complaining about them a lot on my channel because all of a sudden my male decided to just start eating all of his clutches of eggs. But beyond like the wild betta species, I'm trying to think of who my favorite domestic fish has been. I think I know. It's one who I haven't shared on my channel very much, but I was going to make a video about him. It's a fish that I had like a couple years ago. And so I no longer have him. He's passed away already, but I'm working on his grandbabies and I'm trying to continue his line. He was a beautiful black galaxy, it's called, or some people call them avatar. So just a black fish with these beautiful speckly blue scales. And he had this blue dot on his head, this iridescent, just blue hat. It looked like it was so cute. So I'm working on his grandbabies right now. I'm really trying to produce more fish that were more like him.
Are we going to be seeing those on your channel anytime soon?
Yes, yep, I just have to get off my butt and edit that video.
That's so amazing. Thank you very much for sharing that with us. Have you ever entered Betta show, for example? And if not, are you maybe thinking about it?
I have not. I want to. I keep track of the shows and I think it'd be really fun, but I feel like it's a lot of work. You have to time out breeding and spawn growing to be able to take your, fish that you've just grown and be able to send them off to shows. And there are multiple shows like around the country where you try to gain points to like become the ultimate winner, and it feels like a lot of work, and trying to juggle like my family and my work and my fish room and my breeding projects and my baby and my kid and all my hobbies. It's just like it's so much. I can't do it right now, but I would love to. I'd love to do it.
Yeah, because for me, shows are a big part of the hobby, and it's just like I absolutely love going to them. And even though it's not really possible right now, as majority of the shows are online because of the entire pandemic situation, but before when the shows were actually happening, it was also amazing meeting like-minded people, and it was a lot of fun attending. So I wanted to ask this question. But in the past, what other fish species have you kept or bred, and what are your experiences with those?
Besides bettas, I've had a handful of fish. I've kept beautiful guppies. I've had goldfish. I've kept white cloud mountain minnows and bred those, and that was fun.
But nothing stole your heart as much as Bettas, right?
No, nothing has captivated me as much as bettas. I do have this growing interest in paradise fish, but they're basically like big bettas. Let's be honest, they're cold water bettas.
That's probably why you're so interested in them, right?
I think so. It's just something about the colors, it's something about the bubble nests. I really love it. At one point, I kept a little fish called Tenopoma angorsii, and I was really interested in that. It's in the anabantoid family, same with bettas and paradise fish, but it's a little further removed. They're from Africa. I was keeping those for a while, and I was really interested in them, but then I just decided, you know what, I should just focus on the thing I love the most. So I ended up rehoming the Tenopoma angorsii, and I've decided just to focus. Instead of spreading myself too thin with too many interests, I'm just going to love bettas and my little paradise fish and stay focused.
Yeah, I have to admit, I'm entirely the same. I have so many hobbies and I'm all the time, all around. And even with fish keeping, it's just like I'm trying to go through all these small, wormholes and all this kind of stuff. And I should really focus on like breeding guppies and doing what I do. But, sometimes it's just like, oh man, let's just try something new, or let's just try this and that. And then it's easy to get distracted and try a lot of things. And then you're doing a lot of things, but none of them properly, right?
Right. No, exactly. And I struggle with the same thing. I love trying new things, but I gotta just step back and admit to myself that I can't do everything, especially with a little kid and a baby. It's I can't do everything. Calm down, Taylor. Just focus for a while, and maybe you can do it later.
Absolutely. You're also a big fan of aquatic snails. And by the way, so am I. So, which are your favorite types and why do you love keeping them?
I do love snails. I actually used to despise snails. I don't really know why. It's because doing nice little aquascapes, I used to get snails in them and they used to bug me because they'd be on the glass. And I finally came to this turning point where I just decided, you know what? There's nothing wrong with them. They're fine. Stop hating on snails, Taylor. And I started just enjoying them, especially the pink and blue ram's horn snails and mystery snails and even Malaysian trumpet snails. I've actually come to love. I even make them like their own little gel food. I feed them kitchen scraps and I think they're really cute. And yeah, I really love mystery snails. I probably the most out of all of them, followed by the pink and blue ram's horn snails. And one thing I've never tried is rabbit snails, but I would like to one of these days.
That was actually one of my other questions. If there is some particular species of snails that you haven't tried and would love to in the future, so those would be rabbit snails?
Yeah, I think rabbit snails because they're cute. I like their yellow, the yellow ones. I think it's interesting. I also like nearite snails. Oh my gosh, nearite? That's another word I think I've never actually said out loud before. I only type it. I actually have a project where I wanted to try captively like breeding nearite snails and messing around with salt water and brackish water. But it's like, come on, focus, Taylor. That's just another project. Save it for later when you have more time.
Yeah, definitely. Those are super interesting as well. Like, I also love snails so much. I love pink and brown and blue ramshorn snails too. Those are the ones that I keep. And I also keep Malaysian trumpet snails that I've actually collected wild in the thermal springs.
Ooh.
So that was a lot of fun too.
Whoa, really? That is neat.
I'm from Slovakia, and we have these, big mountains and thermal springs coming hot from the ground, meaning that even when it's like minus 20 degrees Celsius during the winter, the water is still like 25, 28 because it's coming from the ground. So a long time ago in the past, some aquarists most likely just, released some Malaysian trumpet snails over there. And as they do not have predator in the wild over there, they completely took over, and they're basically invasive species in these springs. So I've collected some over there, and I absolutely love keeping and breeding them too.
At least they have a neat story behind them. You got to catch them yourself.
Yeah. That was a lot of fun too. But it was so amazing to find out that I'm not the only nerd that actually loves snails because, like there are only two sides of this story. Either you love them or hate them. I guess there
Right,
ain't I
right.
guess there ain't no aquarist who just accept them. You either love them or you hate them.
Right, you can't just be a neutral party to snails. I love mystery snails especially. Like I know everything about like what traits are dominant and recessive and oh, if I paired that mystery snail to that mystery snail, the offspring would probably be like this. And that's what I really get nerdy about. If those giant African snails weren't illegal in the United States, I would have one of those.
Yeah, those are pretty cool too. But okay, I'm not so far with snails. I just throw them in the tank and let them do their own thing. But let me jump to another topic, and that is DIY projects. Which was your most challenging one that you've ever done? And maybe the biggest life hack that you've learned doing DIY?
So, my most challenging DIY project that I've done so far, maybe a little unusual to talk about. It's besides like making the shelving for my fish room and things that are actually kind of difficult just because things are heavy and take a lot of time. I think my most difficult one is trying to figure out how I can make custom aquarium decorations. It's this little rabbit hole I went down trying to learn how to make things that were safe for fish tanks that also, aren't going to fall apart in a fish tank and how to make decorations. And it took me a long time to figure it out because I'm someone who I like to sculpt little figurines, I like to paint, I like miniatures, and I finally found a method to where I can make aquarium decorations and I think make them look decent. I did this a while ago with one of my first aquascapes called the Hobbit tank, where I made a Lord of the Rings themed tank of Bag End, which is Bilbo's house. For people who don't watch Lord of the Rings, it's in the Shire, at the beginning of the first Lord of the Rings movie, and you see the little Hobbit house. It's that one.
It is actually my next question, so I'm super glad that you got into that by yourself.
Oh, good. It's one of my favorite projects that I've done, and also one of the hardest, just because I was pretty much trying to learn from scratch, and I've learned so much since then. My next like custom DIY themed aquascape that I'm going to do is going to be better because of my trial and error and all the things that I learned with the Hobbit tank. Those decorations ended up falling apart after a while, and I know why. I don't want to talk about it yet because I want to save it for the upcoming video. I want to make sure that this new method is actually going to work before I start telling people that it actually works.
So another little something that we can look forward on your channel. I'm super excited about that. And let me back to the hobby team planted tank, because I'm also a super big fan of Lord of the Rings. And I have to say it is one of my favorite videos on your channel. Can you maybe take us a little bit backwards and talk about the entire idea? How did you come up with the idea to make this themed planted aquarium? I know that you've made a couple of mistakes over there and had to work on it for over a year, I guess, if I remember correctly. So can you maybe tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, sure. Well, my husband and I, we are both huge Lord of the Rings fans. Like, a little weird. We're a little weird about it. We grew up with it. We know everything about it. We've read all the books. We've seen all the movies. And then I met my husband, and it was like one of our little nerdy things we had in common. And it was special to us, like to the point where above our mantle in our house, we don't have a picture of like our family or anything like that. We have a map of Middle Earth framed above our mantle.
Just so you don't feel like you're a super nerd, don't worry about it. When I was a kid, I used to attend something called LARP, which is live action role playing, where we would
You were a LARPer?
yes, where we
Oh
would
my god, I love you.
where we would dress up as these Lord of the Ring characters, and we would just run around the forests and fight each other with like plastic swords, and it was just
Yes.
pretending that we're there in the Middle Earth and do all this Lord of the
Oh,
Rings things. So for me, hearing about this is just like, it's not nerdy at all. It's just awesome.
good. I'm so jealous of you. I didn't have friends with like my same interests, so I just had to do it alone. I would just wander out in the woods alone. In my imagination. But that is so funny. So that's why my husband and I, Lord of the Rings is very special to us. And I decided for his birthday, no, for Christmas one year, I was going to make an aquascape based on Lord of the Rings, and it was going to be in his office at work, and it was going to be this special thing. So I spent forever planning it out. It was my very first real aquascape. It was a huge learning experience. I ended up killing off all my plants a couple times. I ended up having to learn so much. But in the end, I was able to make this beautiful little like diorama of Bag End. And I sculpted it all myself. I painted it all myself, and it turned out really, really neat, and it was this really special thing I was able to give my husband. I ended up not being able to keep it at his workplace just because I would have to tend to it so much. It was hard doing that with a baby and going to an office and dealing with a fish tank, so we ended up just transferring it to our house, where we kept it for a really long time, and it's this special little thing, and we had it all the way up until I decided that the decorations were starting to fall apart because of some mistakes that I made, and it was just no longer worth trying to salvage. Instead, just say goodbye and move on to the next one soon.
Definitely. And for all those of you guys who maybe haven't seen the video, I'm gonna have it linked in the description below. It is
Oh, thanks.
definitely one of my favorite videos on Simply Bettas channel, and it's a lot of fun and
Oh,
also
thank you.
absolutely amazing craftsmanship and aquascaping skills. I
And
would put it that way.
oh, thank you. And if you stay to the very end, you'll see me in my really awesome Legolas costume, which
Oh yeah.
I might have been Legolas for Halloween all throughout high school and for like 10 years in a row. Don't judge me. I just want to be Legolas.
All of the Lord of the Rings fans that are listening to this are like, "Oh my god, yes!" And all of the other people who doesn't know that much about Lord of the Rings are gonna be like, "What the heck is going on in this interview?"
They're just gonna roll their eyes like, oh my god.
Alrighty, let's move to
So
another
funny.
topic, and that is aquatic plants. So, what are your favorite kinds of those and experiences with them?
I think my favorite aquatic plants are just the easy ones. Things like Java fern, Anubias. I'm going to experiment with bulbitis, another word I've never said out loud before. I just like easy ones like that. They're fun. I like it a lot. I can put them in low maintenance planted tanks. I don't have to worry too much about them. When we start getting into high tech tanks with like injected CO2, then I feel like that's a whole different animal, and I have different loves for more high maintenance plants. I have favorite species. I really love Monte Carlo. I love red plants. I love higher maintenance plants like that. But I think if I just had to choose a general plant, easy ones that you can just throw in a tank and they're going to do great. And floating plants. I like floaters too, but not duckweed. Duckweed's the worst. Duckweed's like a disease.
It's either you love it or hate it. I'm the one that loves duckweed and make homemade foods from it and have it in all my tanks. So
No!
yeah. So it's exactly the same thing. You either hate it or love it. There is no just accepting
Yeah.
it.
There's no neutrality about duckweed.
All right. You actually have a great tutorial about this topic on your YouTube channel as well, but I need to ask you this question anyway. How are you taking such an amazing fish photography, and do we need to have a super expensive camera to be able to take some beautiful pictures, or is it all about the setup and lighting and these kind of things?
Hey, well, thanks for checking out my fish pictures. Photography is something that I've had to learn. I'm not a photographer. I didn't know anything about cameras before starting this YouTube channel. So I had a lot to learn. I was learning from zero. In my opinion, it's really nice to have a DSLR camera, or at least a camera where you can control the various aspects, that you need to control in order to make a nice image, in order to be able to control your shutter speed, because your fish is moving around so quickly, it can be really hard to take nice pictures. That being said, as nice as it is to have a DSLR camera that you can control, I feel like everything can be done with a high quality smartphone, provided that you have really nice lighting, that your lighting is really bright, that you're in a setup where you can be kind of close to your fish. I think you can get pretty good results just using a phone, but you have to make sure that you have really nice light. So I don't want to discourage anybody from trying to take nice photos of their fish if you don't have a DSLR, but having one just makes it a lot easier because you can attach it to a tripod, or you can fiddle with all your settings to make sure that your images are coming out really nice or really big, so you can crop down the image. There's so much to it. It's hard to talk about, just off the top of my head. But I do have some videos where I kind of show my little setup. I show some special little glass tanks that I made that I use for photography for bettas, that are really thin, so that the fish can't really move away from me very much. There's a bit of a process to it, and it's probably one of the hardest things about selling fish online is taking nice pictures.
The reason why I've asked you this question is because there is a lot of online shows going on right now, and many people are like, oh, I cannot make a proper photography or video, I cannot really enter this particular show, etc., etc. And I know that you have great tutorials on your channel, but I just wanted to encourage people that you don't really have to have these all fancy cameras, and you can still make a good picture or video. And I know it's a complicated process, and I also talk about it on one of my videos where I've been entering the World Guppy contest, and I've been talking about how to get rid of the reflection, how to make the lighting proper, and all these kind of things. And actually, even though I have expensive cameras, I've done it with my telephone just to make sure that it's going to be fair against the other people who are going to be uploading their videos as well. So that was also a great experience, and I wanted to ask you about it because, as I said, many people are actually trying to get into showing fancy guppies or showing fish in general during the pandemic. So more and more people are trying to figure out how to make a good photography or how to make a good video.
I see. It's daunting. If you're just starting out and you don't really know anything about how to capture a good image, I think it's really daunting because it's a steep learning curve, in my opinion. But yeah, with good lighting and a good setup, you can definitely just use your phone.
Yeah, definitely. And also, you've already mentioned that you have your webpage and people can buy some of your fish and also many other things. So, can you maybe tell us a bit more about your webpage and what we can find there?
Sure. Yeah, I have a website called simplybetta.com, and it's where I put my fish for sale when I do have fish. I haven't had fish for a while because I had to take a break from breeding this winter, which is unfortunate. And I also sell things like Indian almond leaves and some supplies and my live food cultures and plants just when I have them, which isn't super often nowadays just because I had to minimize a lot of my fish room, or I had to get rid of my fish room essentially and minimize a lot of my tanks because I was getting ready to move. So I have simplybetta.com where I have some stuff, but as for lots of plants and fish, that's been lacking lately.
So, we're nearly at the end of today's interview, and my last question for you today is what we can expect from Simply Better in the future.
Oh man, what can we expect in the future? I would like to focus a little more on producing high quality betta fish. I mentioned earlier that I've been terrified about making an official how to video about breeding bettas. I don't know why, it's just this weird anxiety that I get. but I'm going to be doing that. I would actually like to be focusing a little bit more on making fun aquascapes, especially themed aquascapes. Like we were talking about decorations for a while. It's an interest of mine that's never really gone away. And for a while now, I've had a pretty bad wrist injury and I haven't been able to do things like sculpt or paint. But I'm getting better. I really want to pick up this little interest of mine and create more themed planted tanks because I had so much fun with the Hobbit tank. And so in the future, I would like to just be focusing a little bit more on creating really neat, high quality aquascapes along with betta fish. So maybe breeding bettas would take a bit of a back seat while I was just able to explore and talk about other things. And that way, I don't have to spend hours a day taking care of fish. Instead, I can spend, 20 minutes a day taking care of fish and the rest of my time creating cool new content.
Amazing. So, ladies and gentlemen, this was Taylor from Simply Betta, the myth and the legend of breeding these beautiful fish. But first of all, super easygoing and amazing person. Taylor, thank you so much for your time and have a lovely rest of your day. And once again, congratulations on soon to be 100K subscribers. And I'm super happy for you to be in this amazing club.
Well, thanks so much. You're too kind. Thanks for having me. This was fun. I love doing things like this. But yeah, this was enjoyable, and I hope that your viewers like my interview.
So this was another episode of Late Night Talk, Fish Keeping Podcast, and I really hope that you guys enjoyed this episode with Taylor and will join us in the future where we will be talking to another amazing professionals about our beautiful hobby. So this was everything that I have for you guys today. Thank you very much for listening, and I really hope to see you in the next episode of Late Night Talk.
Thank you. Bye.